Hi, my name is Ben Lang. I'm the teacher of this math class. Um, at the top, you'll see my name and my email as well as my phone number. If you ever need to contact me about your child's progress or homework or how they're doing in the class, feel free to contact me at any time. Um, to go further down the handout that I gave to you, um, as it says under the course description, I say the student is of the utmost importance in the classroom. And by that, I mean that there will never be a child that is left behind or left in the dust of the other kids that may be doing better than they are. I want everyone in the class to be on the same level so that way when we're discussing things in class or going over problems on the board, everyone is able to participate with not one kid saying everything or one kid never saying anything. Um, if you keep going down, it says the topics that will be in there will be basic math as well as advanced sorts of math. It really varies from the beginning of the year is more basic stuff to the end of the year is more advanced things. Um, and really, it's about a lot of it comes down to real world experiences with math, which I believe connecting school to things that they experience in everyday life helps them to understand um, kind of what they're learning and better grasp the concept. Parent involvement. I'm a firm believer in parents kind of helping me to understand their kids because obviously they know them probably a little bit better than themselves. The way I would do that would be to send you a little questionnaire, kind of a question and answer kind of thing at the beginning of the year to kind of give me a sense of where your kid is at and their academic ability as well as past achievements before this class or little quirks that they may have with their learning styles or things like that. You can ask them for help for the questions if um, there's a question you feel they can answer better than you can. Um, I believe every child learns differently than anyone else. Each child is different in the way that they learn, and there are so many different ways to teach nowadays that learning what the majority of the class can understand and grasp helps me to shape the class into what I want it to be, essentially. Um, Discipline and policy rules of the class. Participation. Participation is huge, I feel, because a lot of classes that I personally have been in or have taught have um, always kind of had one kid that said more than the other, or kids that just kind of sat there and went through the motions the whole class. I feel that participation at an early level sets in good habits because I know when I personally participated a lot, I felt a lot more involved in the class and would receive better grades on things because I was thinking of questions in my head and helping myself to better understand the material. So when a test came or anything like that, I could pull from what we talked about in class, and it kind of sparked my brain a little bit to be able to reach that information instead of just basic studying and all that stuff. I believe it builds a lot of confidence in themselves too because having confidence to speak up in class is kind of something that kids make a mountain out of when it's really not a huge deal. I feel like a lot of them feel as though they're going to be wrong, so they don't say anything to begin with when in fact they may be right. Or the kid may want to say something and someone else says something, but they were right and they didn't say anything about it. And if they do say something about it, it shows me that they are somewhat understanding and are engaged in the learning. It makes me know that I'm doing something right and there's nothing that I really need to change. Whereas when no one is really participating or talking, it makes me think that everyone is lost. And that's something I don't want. Um, the next step would be completing any and all work in the class. I know this seems like a very high expectation, but I feel like it's something that between child and parent can be worked out pretty easily because I would send home with the kid or probably email it to you, um, a sheet with all the assignments throughout the semester with each day that they're due. So that way you can keep track of things that they have in class, or projects or tests or anything, so that the kids don't feel as though there's so much pressure on them because they have a support system at home that can kind of keep them on task a little bit. Um, I've always said that if your child is struggling, I don't want them to be afraid to come to me because I may look down upon them because they're not doing as well as other kids. That's the exact opposite of what I want. I would like them to come to me so I can help them and get them on the level and on track to get better at what we are teaching. Um, as it says at number 3, um, I've always had teachers that when you don't finish all the homework or things like that, you don't have the ability to retake tests or big projects or things like that. And I feel that's a good way to kind of push kids to get their stuff done on time and do it well, because that way then they have the option, if they do bad on a test, then they can retake it. A problem that I've come into with this is that kids who don't do the work are obviously not doing as well on the test and don't have an option to retake it, whereas kids who are doing all the homework are doing well on the test, so they won't really have a need to retake the test. Under certain circumstances, I may allow that, but as for the beginning of the semester and kind of as things get rolling, just completing any and all work in the class is the expectation. I've always believed in aiming high for that kind of stuff, so that way it gives them a bar to kind of set to, and if you get a little bit below that, that's not the end of the world, but obviously exceeding that expectation would kind of be the best thing. And obviously, I know it's not mentioned on here, but obviously just the basis of respect in the classroom, raising your hand, not talking over the teacher, things like that that are just common sense things that a lot of kids at this age should know. So yeah, on to my I like to give a philosophy statement as to where my mindset is when teaching. I'm a firm believer in the idea of progressivism. To kind of go into that a little more, it's putting the child before the material. I feel a lot of times teachers or administration blame the material that's being taught for a child's kind of like the way that they do their work. They blame it on the material that's being taught, when I feel it's more the child learns differently than another child, but we're not addressing that. We just kind of assume that everyone has one mode when they go into a classroom, and we're just going to throw a PowerPoint up on the board every single day and just talk to you. When I feel like some kids learn more by hands-on contact, or seeing more things, or reading things, or doing problems. And that's kind of what the questionnaire would kind of be their certain style of learning that you could ask them, like, hey, what's the best way that you learn? And that way I can get a gauge of a good way to teach the class. As it says, I will make